All right, so in this video, I'm gonna share 4 simple changes that you can make that can totally change your life for the next 50, 60, 70 years of your life. And I've implemented each one of these over the past couple of years, and they can be so simple. It can be something that can be done in 5 minutes or in 10 minutes. And each one of these points, each one of these 4 points is gonna touch on a different area of life. So one of them is gonna be about finance. Another one might be about kind of connecting with yourself and making sure that you're maintaining some level of happiness in your life and content in your life. And another is going to be focused on kind of achieving success and some sort of tactics that you can use for that. So right now there are more than 10.9 million job openings in the United States. And what this means is that employees, workers, are the ones holding the cards rather than employers. And so this can be really, really important for us to understand. Knowing that there are so many job openings, not enough employees, it means that you now are worth a lot more than what you were last year for the current job that you're doing. So what does this all mean? It means that either you can ask for a pay raise from your current employer, or you can consider shopping around for new jobs that might pay you a lot more money for a very similar position. And in fact, statistically, people who change jobs more often end up getting paid more over their lifetime. And there's a pretty clear reason for this. Think about if you worked for the same company for 30 years straight. If you work for 30 years, maybe you get a 3% pay raise every year. But if you consider changing your job maybe every 3 or 5 years to a new company, to a new position, statistically, and you can research this, people get paid more for this. Every time you get a new job, maybe you get a $20,000, $30,000 more than what you were getting previously. So you might ask, Nate, how do I go about asking for a pay raise? And quite frankly, I don't know if I have the answer for you on that one, but I can tell you that you can probably lay out the facts to an employer and just explain to them that, look, there's so many other jobs out there right now at the moment. My friends are changing jobs. They're getting a lot more money. And so sadly, unfortunately, I might have to change jobs as well unless you can pay me more. So that's how I would go about it, but you could use a lot of different angles as well. Like, for example, you want to pay off your college loans. You explain to them, hey, look, if I work with this other employer, I'm going to be able to pay off my loans a year faster, or 6 months faster, because they're going to pay me an extra $15,000 a year more. But now, of course, with all of that said, if you really like your job and you don't want to gamble with your current job at the moment, then maybe consider sticking with your job as well and try not to push the limits too much. So those are just some thoughts on getting paid more, because truth be told, you're probably worth a lot more money than you were last year, which is a weird thing to say, but it's very true. Okay, so another thing that I think many of us struggle with, including myself, is putting yourself in other people's shoes and trying to understand where everybody comes from. So it feels like people today, especially in today's world, we're so polarized on everything, especially looking at something like politics or just beliefs in general. And so we start to just write people off and say, that certain political group is stupid, or, Democrats are idiots, Republicans are stupid, right? Like, we're always just kind of writing people off and just saying, these people are uneducated, or somehow they just don't know what's right and what's wrong. But instead of doing that, what I've really tried to do a lot in the past 5 years or so is put myself in other people's shoes, because I like to think that most humans, like 90% of humans, are rational thinkers. Like, the things happen to them in their lives that causes them to believe certain things or to think certain things. And so to understand that people are going to have different views based on how they grew up, where they grew up, who they grew up with, and to try to go back and visualize, if you were in that position as well, what your views might be. It's very difficult sometimes, but it's something that I really think helps me to have dialogue with almost anyone. It's the reason why I read a lot of books about communism, even though I'm not communist. I'm pretty much the opposite, but I still like to understand their viewpoint, and I like to understand where they're coming from, and they do have a lot of valid arguments. And to simply just write it off, I think is pretty foolish. Another example of this is think about most wars in human history. Every side thinks that they're on the right side. They think that they're the ones in the right, but you have two groups of people fighting each other. So if you try to understand how those people came to those positions, to the point where the last resort felt like we needed to literally kill each other, it's pretty scary that sometimes we can't put ourselves in other people's shoes. All right, so here's something that you probably don't hear very often. It's stop trying to be so well-rounded if you want to be great. And it doesn't matter what you want to be great at. I think it's one of the problems that sometimes like society in general pushes us towards, is that we need to be perfectly well-rounded. Imagine if Michael Jordan in high school, instead of playing basketball for 6 to 8 hours a day, instead maybe he spent an hour a day playing piano, an hour a day learning math, an hour a day studying for something else, an hour a day learning a new language, and then an hour a day playing basketball. Now, he might be really well-rounded, but he probably would not have been the greatest basketball player of all time if he was trying to be so well-rounded. So the point here is that if you want to be really good at something, if you're striving for any type of greatness in any capacity, then try to double down on it, and you can cut things out. So another example is, let's say that if I wanted to turn this video into a blog article and I wanted to write about this. I'm a terrible writer. It would take me probably 2 days to do this. So instead of trying to be well-rounded and become a good writer as well as a speaker and everything else, I decide, let me just focus on speaking, not do the writing. If I want to do the writing, I'll let somebody else do that who's already skilled at writing, rather than trying to be so well-rounded. Another example of that is let's say that you're an investor and you want to be a great investor, but you're jumping around to all these different industries. You're jumping around to, like, you're investing into Chinese stocks, and then you're investing into Canadian stocks, and you're investing into Mexican stocks and American stocks. And if you're all over the place and you're not focused on something, then you can end up just sort of being mediocre, subpar, or just kind of on par, because you're not hyper-focused on something very specific. So that's kind of just general advice as a whole, is to double down on certain things and just kind of forget about the rest. So the fourth change that you can implement is, it's just one word, and it's to isolate. Now, there are so many benefits to isolating, and this doesn't mean that you have to go and live in the woods for the next 5 years. It can be something as simple as once per month, maybe just leaving your phone in your apartment, going for a walk, and sitting in a field for an hour or two. But isolating has so many benefits to it, because when you think about our lives, right, we're so caught up in so many things that are happening at any given moment. We're so caught up in what's happening at work, what's happening with family, what's happening with friends, what's going on in our social life and everything else in between, that it's so difficult to kind of be able to analyze ourselves and be like, hey, this is where I want to be, or kind of keep track of like, hey, I'm not where I want to be right now. So if we're always going, and we never have time to isolate, we never have time to think about ourselves and about our lives, I think it can be kind of harmful. So that's why I like to get out, and this is why I probably isolate a little bit more often than what most people do. But I actually think the more you isolate, the actually more impactful it can be every time you do that. I come up with great ideas. I'm able to really find a lot of peace when I isolate. On top of that, though, there's so many other benefits to isolating that people look over. Like, for example, reading books, right? Our attention spans, they're so short these days. And one of the best ways to increase your attention span is to isolate for some time, just a couple of hours. It doesn't have to be forever. And this is why I'm able to read about a book per week, because I'm able to isolate. I turn off my phone, I go somewhere else, and I'm able to really focus on something like that. And so it's just one of the best things that I could suggest to anybody in today's world in 2021, when it feels like there's a million different things going on at any given point. It can get stressful. And it's one of the best ways to de-stress. I think I just listed 10 different reasons why you should consider isolating from time to time. So give it a try. I don't think you're going to regret it. So those are the 4 changes that you can consider implementing today. I hope you found the video valuable. I'm going to get back to camping, but we'll see everybody next time. Peace. Just launch the book.